Right now, joining us to discuss some of the violence that we saw in the streets over the weekend, some in Walnut, California, up outside San Francisco, as well as what I saw, witnessed in Washington, D.C. after the large rally in support of President Trump, with people coming from all around the country to show their support in a march. We are joined by Andy Ngo. Andy Ngo is editor-at-large at the Post-Millennial, and he's got a brand new book out. It's on pre-order now. It's called Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. Andy, thanks for joining us, sir.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on today.
When I was watching everything going on and I saw you engaging on social media with the videos that you were seeing with some of your friends and fellow journalists who were on the ground there, I thought of you because you know their tactics. You know what Antifa does. When you saw what happened after this peaceful march in Washington, could you have predicted this, basically, when the sun went down, what ended up happening?
Unfortunately, I could, and I'm so thankful that there are some really incredible independent videographers, journalists, and those with Daily Caller. There's a small group of us who go around the country and document this because, as you and your listeners know, the mainstream media, the legacy media, the ones with the huge budgets that should be covering this stuff, even when it's based in their hometown, like D.C., are nowhere to be found. So I know after Biden was announced to be the projected winner, there was some people who believe that, oh, well, then the riots and BLM and Antifa will calm down. That's actually a wrong analysis. So if you've been paying attention to the riots and demands and demonstrations throughout this year, there's been a very strategic shift away from opposition to the Trump administration to specifically opposition to the U.S., its history, its culture, its symbols of it, as well as, of course, hatred of law enforcement. And these are things that are going to be around administration after administration. So all Americans who care about the Constitution, who care about liberties, should be extremely concerned. I think the symbolism on Saturday of seeing mobs of hundreds of people attacking peaceful citizens who are engaging in the political process in the nation's capital, that is as disturbing as the violence itself, in my opinion.
If you could talk a little bit, you mentioned the legacy media and how they cover it or choose not to cover it. If they covered the violence that happened in Washington, D.C., it seemed the predominant narrative, Andy Ngo, was both Trump supporters and Black Lives Matter or Antifa groups, if they even named them, were instigating violence with each other. Like both sides came for a fight. Can you sort of break that down for me? And how that meshes with what you witnessed, or not I witnessed, but what you saw in these videos?
So in my communications with the people who were on the ground, these people who recorded these crucial videos, what essentially happened, as has happened in 2015 when there were various Trump rallies in progressive or liberal cities where Trump supporters were getting attacked after leaving events, it was kind of the same thing in that certain streets are cut off by law enforcement, and then the violent extremists on the left use that to advantage in that people are then sort of funneled into one another, and they're left defenseless, as you see in these videos. And it's not just, yes, there were videos of people who I assume are Proud Boys brawling with Antifa in the streets. That was just one part of it. Late in the night, hours and hours before then, you saw people who were diners at hotels, eating outside, were getting attacked with projectiles and explosive mortars. Families with children were getting harassed and followed. So it's not just the punches and that type of violence we should be paying attention to. It's this whole systematic intimidation and harassment that is the stated goal by Antifa is to make it so that it's so consequential for people to engage in the political process that they just withdraw completely.
Yeah.
And it's a form of terrorism.
You know, I actually found myself thinking as I saw the event and I witnessed it. I saw a little bit of it firsthand as I actually made my way down to downtown D.C. Early in the day. I got out of there very early. I had other engagements, but I saw the massive crowds that were there marching in support of the president. And when I saw the videos of the violence after the fact at night, Andy, I swear to God, I thought to myself, I may even said it to my wife Meredith. I may have said, well, listen, these Trump supporters are walking around downtown D.C. after dark carrying a Trump flag. I mean, what do they think is going to happen? And I stopped myself and I thought, wait a minute, they have every right to walk around in their nation's capital carrying a flag of a candidate they support. But I've even been programmed. It's like, oh, they're going to get beat up. That, as you just said, that's the climate they want to create, isn't it?
Exactly. And, I've been railing on the legacy and mainstream media because, like, they could be, that's a very important, the free press is a very important institution to all free societies. But they're negligent in their duties in that they're not informing the public of this extremism that exists within these far left movements. And it's created this perception, which you'll see repeated over and over by liberal commentators, is that, they're not really violent, or these are really isolated cases. These are peaceful movements, as they keep repeating like a mantra. And so it gives license and cover for these radical violence extremists to continue to do what they do with really little pushback, unfortunately.
As of now, the mayor of the District of Columbia still has not said anything condemning the violence in her city, in the nation's capital, over the weekend, a place that is supposed to be ultra extremely open to political protests and political marches and such. Not violence, but she's the mayor of the District of Columbia. She should set a tone in an atmosphere where people of all political persuasions can come to their nation's capital and let their voice be heard. Her silence over what happened, and seems to me is tacit approval. In other words, if you come and you voice the opinions that she politically does not agree with, well, them's the breaks. What should she do right now to reverse that impression?
Well, the mayor of D.C. is a mayor for all citizens who live in under her jurisdiction, and that includes people she agrees with and people she doesn't agree with.
Right.
And her silence on the violence that happened in the downtown of her city speaks a lot. But it's not surprising her.
Yeah.
And
well, actually, if you could sort of raise the warning here, because you've seen this play out in Portland, where you've had mayors and police chiefs who have acquiesced to these groups and tried to accommodate these groups and tried to find common ground with these groups, and tell us the danger there as you walk down that path.
The strategy in Portland by Mayor Ted Wheeler, who's a Democrat, has been to just let the protests play out until they tire themselves out. Well, it doesn't happen. We're 6 months into it. We just had more violence against particularly businesses and properties here on a weekly basis now instead of a daily basis. And it's just become embedded into part of the sort of the everyday scene. Like, people are just like, their response when I tell them, oh, were you aware that a few days ago a business in Portland was targeted in political attack and got completely smashed up? They're like, oh, just one business? Okay. Like, this, I'm just, the concern here in all these cities that are run by Democrats is the fear that I have is that by not nipping it in the bud when they have the opportunity, you could argue back in May or even several years ago, they've allowed these networks to develop, to become more sophisticated, And you're going to see not just more street violence, it's going to lead to death. And the thing that the other thing we have to think about is the reaction that it's provoking by people on the right, people who are also bringing weapons and guns to their political protests. This is a breakdown in society.
Yeah.
We're watching it play out pretty quickly when usually these things take a long time. I'm concerned for
Andy
this
No
country.
has been reporting on, studying, filming, and writing about Antifa for years now. His book coming out is called Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. I'd also like to touch on, if I could, and the way the police handled this situation over the weekend. I'm sure you saw some of the videos that I saw. One was quite disturbing, where there was and it was not at night. It was the sun was still out. A Trump supporter went to the police line, trying to have access to get out. Say, listen, they're coming after me. They're chasing me. I want to be able to exit this way. And the cops had a line there, and they said, nope, you can't go there. You got to go to the right, or you got to go to the left. And I understand the police are trying to control the crowd and control traffic. So this person was denied the ability to get safe passage where the police were, Andy. He then started walking where the police told him to walk, and he was immediately surrounded by these people and beaten up. What can the police learn here? What have they learned? What do they need to do better to sort of, I'm sorry, they've got to take sides. They've got to see who's instigating this violence. It's not enough for them to just step back and say both sides are wrong, because what we're clearly seeing is one side is starting the violence.
Well, there needs to be lawsuits. And the thing about the right that is unfortunate is that there are not really the same type of organizations that are willing, networks of lawyers who are either working for pro bono or low bono to really force through lawsuits to get injunctions for these type of changes. Whereas, on the left, you have the National Lawyers Guild, ACLU, and all these others who would hop on it within a heartbeat and to launch lawsuits left and right to force the hand of cities and police departments to get change. What happened, the instance that you just described, that's what happened in San Jose in 2015 after a Trump rally when people were getting beaten in those streets. And it's just, I don't believe that it was intentional or anything. It's just they are giving a certain order to close off certain streets, and then there's no foresight to think, well, if you're forcing people to go the other way, it just everybody's getting funneled together. What do you think will happen? And
Right.
if you're not there to protect these people, well, they're going to get outnumbered and mobbed, and that's what happened.
Yep. There's one other aspect of this that I would love to discuss with you, Andy, No, if we could, and that is this pattern of behavior from Antifa, and there really is. It's very consistent. Every city, I've been watching your reporting for years now, and they always claim that they are the victims of violence. Right? They always push the narrative that they're being attacked, and they're either retaliating or defending themselves, or they deny they've done anything, despite the fact that videos show quite the contrary. Is that something that is just sort of out of their playbook?
Yes, essential to their MO. I write about that a lot in my upcoming book, in that how they describe, how they view violence is really interesting in that in their ideology, they view the belief systems of their political opponents to be inherently violent. Therefore, that gives them justification to respond preemptively. They still call it self-defense no matter what. So they can be the first one to throw the punch, the first one to throw something in your face, and they'll say that's self-defense because this individual has quote-unquote fascist views. But as you saw, they consider the 17 million people who voted for the current sitting president fascist. So,
right.
In
their mind, you can't you can't vote for Donald Trump without being a fascist. Therefore, you're in their crosshairs, basically. Sometimes literally in their crosshairs.
Exactly.
It's not enough. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Again, Andy No's book, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it, is coming out very soon, actually. In fact, it's out. When is it out? In April? Forgive me.
No, 2nd of February.
Oh, it's in February. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. And so it's on pre-order now at centerstreet.com. Unmasked is the name of the book. Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. Andy is a independent journalist. He's not on the payroll of any big media organization, although he should be if he wanted to be. So this is the way to support his great journalism, and that is to get his book. And I'm looking forward to getting my own copy, and I'll have you on when it comes out. In the meantime, Andy, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much.